All right, welcome back to Niners Nightly. It's our pleasure to welcome to the KNBR airwaves one of our favorites. Kyle Posey's been covering the Niners for years, does an amazing job for Niners Nation, and he's with us on the Uma guest line to talk a little bit about the stories of the day and get the Niners going on the offseason in the right direction. Kyle, good to see you, man. How are you?
Doing well. It's weird. What are we supposed to do this weekend? There's no football on.
I know. We're gonna have to talk to our spouses.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to somehow be around our families. So what are we gonna do?
It's been a half year since I've seen them.
Hi, I'm Larry. Nice to meet you. What's your name again? Dad, I'm your oldest son.
Right.
Well, what did you think? Before we get into, the DC debates, Gus Bradley, Jim Schwartz, Raheem Morris, and I definitely want your thoughts on that. But, man, it was an interesting year for the Niners. I mean, there were expectations early. Then they lose Bosa early. Then they lost Fred Warner in Tampa. And I think at that point, most Niner fans were like, it's not our year. But then Mac Jones played really well. He won 5 of the 8 starts he made. Purdy came back. Kyle, I thought Purdy was going to come back and play like 2 games and then be kind of diminished and not very good. He didn't look like he even had any injury at all that I could tell. He played great ball, and it really elevated them down the stretch. I was in Philly when they upset the Eagles, and then I was in Seattle when they got their doors blown off by the Seahawks. But I would say good year. How do you view this season?
Yeah, I think so. You don't get to dictate whether you're going to be good or not, right? Like fans can't pull the plug whenever they want to. The same for like the Super Bowl window. You can't say, hey, the window's closing. Like NFL, it's so fickle from year to year that anything goes, and that's true for in season. So after that Week 10 Rams game, a lot of people were probably thinking, season's over, just gave up 42 points, probably going to get blown out every other game, and that's just not the case in the NFL. I thought, to your point, getting quarterback play, getting valuable quarterback play kind of shows how important that position is and how good any team can be when you have that A minus type of quarterback play that the 49ers got. But I think this season showed, hey, like Shanahan is scheme proof. Like as long as he is around, they're going to be very good. As long as they're getting high quarterback play, they're going to be very good. But I think it also shows some flaws in the 49ers, whether that's in the secondary, at wide receiver, and I'm sure like the positions that most people will talk about over the course of the offseason. So did they overachieve? I'm not sure that they did, because this team was always supposed to be good. And yes, you took away 2 Hall of Famers from the defense, but I thought the offense was so good, and they hit on the right matchups. Like they have an all-pro running back. There's a lot of things that went well that was always going to be in their favor. And I think Shanahan is the type of coach that capitalized on that.
Sitting in the upper deck and watching, or in the media level, whatever it was in Philly, and watching the Niners defense on the binoculars, and I'm sitting there and I'm looking at Kalia Davis and Jordan Elliott and Sam O and Cleve Farrell, and then a linebacking core that there was Gifford and Kendricks and Wallow, and I'm sitting there going, wow, look at these. This was not the plan necessarily. And that's what they were leaning on late. And obviously the rest of the league noticed, because Robert Saleh quickly got a head coaching job in Tennessee. There's a lot of speculation about Gus Bradley being the DC. But today the Browns decided not to name Jim Schwartz their their head coach. They went with Todd Monk and the offensive guy instead. And from what I'm hearing, Schwartz may be discontented with the fact that he got bypassed here. Do you have a preference? I mean, there's been 3 names mentioned: Raheem Morris, Bradley, and Schwartz. Do you have a preference on those 3 guys, or how would you rank those 3 DC candidates?
Yeah, I would say, based on everything that he's done over the past decade, it would be tough to say no to a coordinator like Jim Schwartz, just because I think since he was a head coach the first time around, his scheme has proved to stand the test of time. Like, he knows how to win. He knows how to be competitive. So I would probably say him. I would go Raheem Morris next, because we saw when he was with the Rams, yes, he had Aaron Donald, but like they were legit. You can tell the drop off from when he left. And that's not to say like Chris Shula is a bad DC. He's just not Raheem Morris. And obviously Shanahan has ties to all of these guys. And I would say Bradley is last, and I would put Bradley last just because the data that we have on him, the sample size. Like, I haven't tweeted this out, but I have a chart of how Gus Bradley has done, how his defenses have fared from 2017 to 2024 in EPA, success rate, DVOA, which is efficiency that's schedule adjusted, third down conversion, and red zone touchdown percentage in EPA. Gus Bradley, out of all those years, one time inside of the top 10. Success rate, never inside the top 10. DVOA, never inside the top 10. Third down conversion rate, once inside the top 10. Red zone touchdown percentage, twice inside the top 10. So more often than not, he is outside the top 10. And a lot of those stats, a lot of those categories, he's outside the top 20. So like history would suggest the 49ers are not going to upgrade at coordinator if they go Gus Bradley's direction. He's just like more or less a vanilla kind of coordinator. And I just do not get that feeling when I watch a Jim Schwartz or even a Raheem Morris defense.
You know, it's interesting, though. I think Bradley might have been part of the master plan to try to maintain a little continuity because they did go from Wilkes to Sorensen back to Saleh. And I think they knew when they had Saleh that he very, very well could have been a one-and-done guy, and sure enough, he was. So I think Bradley came in with the idea that he would take over this defense, but there's no guarantees. And now Schwartz is available. What's your feeling? I mean, do you think that Shanahan stays with Bradley, who we didn't even really know until Saleh introduced him? But they, I think Bradley became part of their brain trust this year. Do you think they go with the continuity hire in Bradley, or do they go with, guys like Morris or, I kind of think Schwartz is probably the most accomplished of the three,
Sure.
But some people might say it's Morris. What do you think? Do you think Kyle goes with Bradley, or do you think he pivots here and says, I didn't realize Schwartz was going to be available, but he is now, and now we're going to go with him?
So, I mean, based on what the 49ers have done under Kyle Shanahan, they've been a rush 4, drop 7, more than likely leaning toward cover 3. Like that's where Saleh came from. And obviously you have to evolve, and the 49ers have done a good job of evolving, but Gus Bradley was more or less the architect of those lob Legion of Boom defenses. And he has the Seahawks ties. He has the Saleh ties. So it would make sense. But is now the time that you want to be comfortable, right? Is now the time based on everything that we've seen from the past couple years. I would argue in 2023, when the 49ers made their Super Bowl run, it wasn't on the heels of their defense. Like they were giving up plenty of points and yards. They were just scoring so many that nobody ever noticed it. So if there was ever to turn a page, if there was ever a time to not be safe, to not be comfortable, to go outside of your comfort zone, I feel like this is the year. Because no matter what you do with Nick Bosa, he's going to be an all-pro. No matter what you do with Fred Warner, he's going to be an all-pro. And your defense is going to be catered around those two regardless. So I feel like now, if you're going to turn the page, like a guy like Schwartz would make a ton of sense. And even Morris, more or less. So I have a hard time coming to grips with Bradley being a top 10 coordinator or being a coordinator that could lead this defense to a top 10 unit, compared to who else would be available, who else would out there. I would go as far as saying, hey, get all the way outside of your comfort zone and hire a guy who's been an expert in like quarters coverage, which is obviously not new, but that's where the league is trending. We saw the Seahawks. They have a passing game coordinator, Carl Scott. He coached under Saban. He's been in the NFL a few years now, was with the Vikings for a couple of years. So that would be my pick. Obviously, I don't think they're going to go there, but if they do even interview a player like or a coordinator like that, to me, that tells me Shanahan is willing to evolve and willing to get out of his comfort zone. So, like, do the interviews will they really matter? Probably not, but I am interested to see like who they do bring in.
Kyle Posey with us on the UMA guest line as we talk a little Niner football here on KNBR on Niners Nightly. You tweeted today, and I thought it was really good. Probably the best tweet I saw on the Schwartz, being bypassed, and the connection for the 49ers. And you said Schwartz would be on the opposite end of the spectrum of the 49ers' previous defensive philosophy. You went on to say no team ran man coverage at a higher rate than the Browns last year. The 49ers were 23rd in their man coverage rate. Schwartz blitzed also at the 10th highest rate. The Niners didn't really blitz very much this year. I mean, they had some games they did, but they had games they didn't touch it at all. They were 23rd in the NFL in blitz rate. And then you went on to say it would also mean there would be an overhaul at multiple spots in the secondary, and you finished up with, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. And I kind of share that sentiment. So what do you think? I mean, do you think would the 49ers have to almost start anew in the secondary if they went with Schwartz, seeing that he likes to play man and they've had so many kind of zone-based corners through the years?
Well, yeah, I mean, you were at the Eagles game. You saw that secondary. And yes, the 49ers gave up a couple of big plays, but by and large, and for the most of the season, that Fangio defense with Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean, guys who can fly, guys who can really run, they held their opponents in check. They kept their opponents in check. The 49ers secondary, it's not really known for fleet of foot players. Like we've seen time and time again when they were exposed in one-on-one coverage or just running man coverage, they weren't in position. Deommodore Lenoir against the Eagles, against that same game, the numbers might look okay, but there were drops. Like there were some times where if the Eagles just caught the ball, we might not have been talking about the 49ers advancing. So I do think it's time to evolve. I do think it's time to shift toward, hey, like these zone, squatty, heady type players, as opposed to the high-level athletes like Quinyon Mitchell, 4.3, Cooper DeJean, 4.3. Like those guys all tested very, very well. And it helps that, they're experienced and they have talent as well. But athleticism has to play a big part in the secondary evaluations. And even at the safety level, the 49ers have a pair of guys who run 4.5s, which like it's not slow because, I mean, I would say it's slow in terms of what you want your safeties to do. Siegel is a guy who could really run, but he wasn't really known as a coverage safety coming out either. So I do think they have a lot to address in the secondary. And a lot of people will instantly point to, hey, the lack of pass rush. And I really didn't see it that way. I thought if Saleh had corners who he was confident and who he felt like could cover, we would have seen a lot more, an aggressive scheme, a more man-to-man. And that just really wasn't the case until it was too late, hands tied behind his back.
They've got some good young players in the secondary, but, how many of them are going to fit? Who's, how exactly do they evolve? I mean, who do you, of their safety trio, they got three young safeties, Jair Brown, Malik Mustafa, Marquise Siegel. To me, it seems like Siegel and Mustafa would be a great fit. Mustafa in the box, Siegel down the field. But as you said, even though Siegel runs 4.3 and used to be a corner, at times his coverage skills were lacking this year. I thought even at the end of the year, I thought he played one really good game against the Eagles and one kind of subpar game against Seattle. I kind of like Jair Brown, but a lot of people really don't and feel like that he's a real liability. How do you view that trio?
I like Jair Brown quite a bit. I'm glad you said that because you're always going to remember like the one play, the touchdown that he gave up against the Texans where he tried to undercut it, didn't have the speed to do it, but the throw was also perfect. But there are so many other plays during the game where he's fitting against the run, he makes a tackle at the line of scrimmage, or he's covering up somebody else's mistake that nobody's really going to notice. But I would rank him as their best safety, which is going to go completely against the grain. But I thought he was just their most consistent. I would look to overhaul, especially if they're going to have a new scheme, the other safety. But you could also make an argument that you could do better than Jair Brown as well. So I think the 49ers need to enter this offseason under the impression that, hey, there are ways for us to improve on the back end, and we should not let contracts, rookie deals, previous prestige, any of that influence our decisions. I think they can upgrade at effectively every position outside of nickel, who I think Upton Stout can do anything, play any coverage, can do just about anything. To me, he's their best player in the secondary.
To me, he might be their best young defensive player, period. I don't know that there are there. I don't see a lot of great young players on the 49ers, but he is outstanding. Now, you kind of mentioned that, hey, John Lynch needs to look for John Lynch, a John Lynch, a leader in the secondary. And this is a unique year for safety. I mean, there's 3 or 4 guys here that I think are really, really good. I mean, Caleb Downs from Ohio State is special. Dylan Thieneman from Oregon is a really solid football player. Ramsey from SC is a good player. I like A.J. Halsey from LSU. He's very, very physical. And the more I watch, Keontae Scott might be a corner, but he might be a safety. He's got great ball skills for the Hurricanes. But the kid that's opening my eyes this week is this Emmanuel McNeil Warren, and I saw him a couple times this year. You mentioned Quinyon Mitchell. Before that, we had Samuel, who's the other Toledo kid that the Niners used to have? Womack, yeah. And now this is Emmanuel McNeil Warren. Is a big safety. We're talking about 6'2", 6'3", really rangy, very talented. Do you have a favorite safety in this draft? And do you see a great player there? Because safeties are like, they're never drafted high, but the ones who do go high are sometimes, they're Ronnie Lott. I mean, they're special. They're superstars sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, the way people talked about Kyle Hamilton pre-draft and the way that he panned out, like he deserved to go where he did. Obviously, it's tough to put anybody in that kind of category, but the guy that you just mentioned, McNeil Warren, as far as just his awareness and knowing what the 49ers need, like that would be as good of a pick, as good of a fit, I guess I should say, as it gets, because he can come downhill and make those same plays that I was talking about that Jair Brown could, but he could also turn and run and take away just coverages that aren't supposed to be there. So the 49ers, they didn't really take a gamble by letting Talanoa Hufanga walk just because he had injury history. But if you watched him with the Broncos this year, he looked like 2022 All-Pro Talanoa Hufanga. And that was a player, that type of playmaker was what the defense was missing. So I think it's pretty important to get back to that type of player where, hey, he might not test overly well, and I'm not sure McNeil Warren does, but he gets to places. He can kind of bait the quarterback, and he always seems to be in the right place around the ball. So in my mind, getting a player like that who has just a nose for the football will go a long way. So I like him. Arizona has another one, Genesis Smith.
Yeah,
I think he's going to
ASU.
test very, very, very well. He's in my neck of the woods. He actually went to high school here. I would not be surprised if he ran high 4.3s, low 4.4. He's really that good of an athlete. So if we're talking about a Jim Schwartz defense, you're going to have a lot of single high safeties looks, and you're probably going to have your corners on an island. You want that rangy center field type of free safety who can go kind of number to number, hash to hash, and Genesis Smith can do that. So those would be two guys that I would identify as fits for the 49ers. The guy from the Ducks that you mentioned, great player. I think he's going to be very good, but I also think he's going to be drafted before the 49ers pick. So I would go McNeil Warren and Genesis Smith as guys that I would kind of put a stamp on that, hey, the 49ers, this is the guy you want.
I'll tell you, one guy that I'm keeping my eye on, because South Carolina guys have been testing off the charts, and they got Jalen Kilgore. Kilgore, looks to me like he could be a weak side linebacker. He's so big and physical, but I've been told from some of my scouting buddies that wait until you see Kilgore work out in Indy, that he's going to light it up. So I'm eager to see. South Carolina has come up with some freaky athletes the last couple of years, including Nicky Manwari. Let's talk about the corners for a second. There's a lot of speculation that Renardo Green may have been falling out of favor. I think he's a pretty good player, to be honest. And I didn't think Lenore had a great year, but I've always liked Lenore as a player. Luter, if they do go to a Schwartz, as a coordinator, and they play more man, I think that's going to benefit Terrell Luter. He played nothing but press man at South Alabama. Really needed to kind of teach himself how to play off coverage, and needed to teach himself a little bit how to play, well and aggressively within a zone. Had some injuries as well, and then there's Jacob Robinson, who ran in the 4.3s and looked good in the preseason and in training camp. He's on the practice squad. I expect him to emerge next year. What do you think of the 49er corners? And are you sour on Renardo Green? It seems like there are people, maybe even the Niners might be a little sour on Green.
Yeah, I mean, it was to see Shanahan react that way in a playoff game on one coverage makes it seem like he was almost ready to pull the plug at the first mistake Renardo Green made. And remember, that's not the first time he's kind of gotten in his face this past season. So maybe there is something going on there that we don't know about. But I would honestly trust him in man coverage, I should say, more than I would the corner on the other side of the ball. So I thought Lenore, when he was playing nickel, was a very good player. And this is the first time that he was playing, on the outside on the perimeter, which is not easy, especially in a transition year. But I think at the same time, as the season went along, it looked like as though Saleh was just kind of hiding him. Like they ran a bunch of coverages where you wouldn't really see him go one-on-one with the other team's premier wide receiver. That was always Renardo Green. So the more that I watched the 49ers defense, the more it looked to me like, hey, we don't really want Lenore to be the primary target. We don't want Lenore to be the guy other teams picked on. And that kind of changed in the Eagles game. And that's when A.J. Brown, again, he didn't have the stats, but if you were to simulate that game a couple different times, it probably does not look very well for Lenore. So I think they do need that longer corner. And the guy that you mentioned has the frame, Luter, but he doesn't have the experience. And you're not going to bring in a guy who, is probably in the final year of his contract, I believe, is Ricky Dill, to kind of compete for a job. So I think that's where we're looking at somebody from the outside, maybe in the draft, free agency, whatever it may be. But I would not be surprised if the 49ers just kind of pivot in a way at cornerback this offseason.
Kyle Posey with us from Niners Nation. You guys should all check out Niners Nation. They do a lot of great stuff, and Kyle's really the lead guy over there. You don't work alone, but you're doing a lot of incredible stuff over there. Let's talk about the linebackers, because to me, this is the area where the Niners have dropped so precipitously. I mean, they used to have the best linebackers going. They had Warner and Greenlaw and Aziz. And they let, Aziz walk. And, now in hindsight, I don't know if that was a great decision. And D Winters, to me, I know people really like him. He looked good early in the year when he was fresh. Late in the year, he missed a lot of tackles. He gets engulfed in the run game. Sometimes he looks a little too small to me. I like Bethune, but he's a little bit of a step slow. I like the athleticism of Nick Martin, but obviously now he's got concussion issues that are significant. The rest of the guys, as far as I'm concerned, can move on. I mean, Curtis Robinson, Kendricks, Wallow, Gifford's a special teamer. None of those guys do anything for me. This is a major, major area. And if they go to Schwartz, Schwartz probably was one of the guys that located Carson Schlesinger.
Yeah.
I think Devin Bush is a free agent. I think Devin Bush would be a nice fit for the 49ers. Heck, I'm a big Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah fan. If he ever gets his neck right, I'd love to see him here in San Francisco. He's a outstanding second-level defender. What do you think? Is there a linebacker in this draft or in free agency that you really like? They got to find a way to add more than one guy at this spot. I mean, they are so slow on that second level, and they used to be incredibly fast.
Yeah, it's not hindsight, by the way, to say that they should have re-signed Azeez Al-Shaair. I know that was a little while ago, but
yeah,
we're talking about a guy that was getting all-pro votes this year, and he was very good every year that he played with the 49ers. So that type of aggression is what they need, in my mind, not so much speed. You mentioned D Winters getting swallowed up in the run game. There were plenty of occasions this year with the Texans and plenty of occasions when he played with the 49ers where Al-Shaair would take the guy and move him backward, and Fred Warner now has a free lane to rush. So obviously this group is going to be much better with 54 in the lineup. He kind of hides and is a glue guy for everybody. So he brings the level of everybody. I honestly would not, I don't want to say waste resources, but I wouldn't invest like a third-round pick in a Carson Schlesinger. And I understand how good he was. To me, like, he arguably was the rookie of the year. But in my mind, it's a coverage pass rush kind of league. And you can more or less hide that linebacker, especially when he's playing next to an all-pro. So could they go out and get a free agent or draft a guy in the 6th round like they did D Winters? Sure, like that would make sense. But investing early draft resources, I would not do that.
Yeah, I mean, because you can get these guys late. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, and there's a bunch of them this year. I mean, Shad Banks from Texas San Antonio, kind of an undersized guy. I mean, there's a bunch of guys that are going to be I just watched.
Greenlaw was day 3. Al-Shaair was undrafted.
Right.
Obviously, Fred Warner was third round, but they've gotten production. Winters day 3, so they've gotten production from guys late in the draft.
No question, and that's going to be an area where there's going to be a lot of good players on day 3 that they can pick from. How about what do you think of the front? What do you think of the Niner rookie D linemen? There were split opinions on all these guys, and it's interesting. I did an interview at the end of the year with Jordan Elliott. Not our friend Jordan Elliott, but the D tackle Jordan Elliott. And though I did just have Jordan Elliott on the other day, people were like, "Hey, I was looking for the defensive tackle, and you had this guy on from NBC Sports Bay Area." I'm like, "Yeah, but they're both great. They're both great." But I was talking to Jordan Elliott about the young defensive tackles, and he's like, they were really good this year, but he did differentiate. He's like, Alfred Collins has got a lot of talent. He's like, but CJ West, really came on at the end of the year, and you could kind of tell that he holds CJ in a higher regard than Collins. Collins, of course, was the 2nd-round pick. CJ was the 4th-round pick. I've always felt that CJ was the better player than Collins. Collins is an awesome body, though, and he's very serious about being a good football player. So that I think they actually hit on both those guys. Neither are pass rushers per se. What did you think of those two guys? What did you think of Mikel?
Yeah, I thought as run defenders, like they were about as good as you can expect from rookies, from first-year players. In my mind, and if you remember back in training camp, CJ West was the one getting in before the 2nd-round pick, Alfred Collins. So it shouldn't be too surprising to hear somebody like Jordan Elliott say, hey, like the 4th rounder was better, but they almost felt that way right away. So kudos to them for sticking to their guns. And as the season went along, they both started to play more than Jordan Elliott and Kalia Davis, and it looked like it. They looked like they should be playing. So I thought they played pretty well. And in my mind, the lack of depth really hurt them, as like the bodies around them kind of going down. So now Collins and CJ West are having to play 40, 50 snaps as opposed to 25, 30. So they're not as effective as the game goes along. They were never going to really be pass rush threats. So in my mind, if we're listing the list of needs for the 49ers defense, no matter who's the defensive coordinator next year, so it's always going to be Bosa. It's always going to be Huff. It's always going to be Michael Williams as like the pass rusher. But they could go a long way with finding a pass rushing defensive tackle. So like that 3-tech, you're watching the Eagles and you see Jalen Carter. You're watching the Seahawks and you see Young out of Texas. I forgot what his name is, but the first rounder, Byron Murphy.
Byron Murphy. Yeah.
So you're seeing like dominant D tackles give the Niners fits, give everybody fits. In my mind, that's really where the 49ers are going to need to upgrade. Not so much the edge rushers, because like you have Bosa, you have Huff, and you have like a wave of guys, Keon White, Sam O, that can be the depth. And that's where they're at their best. But you need somebody who can really put pressure on the quarterback from the interior. The plan was for that to be Michael Williams. There's no real progression though, right? Because he didn't play. So it's hard to imagine like he's going to flip a switch next year without having played any tangible football, any real football. So with that in mind, I would not be surprised, and it's probably going to drive 49ers fans crazy to see another early pick or a high investment on a pass rushing 3-tech. That's what they really need in my mind. What is that? What do you think about that?
I agree. I totally agree. You're going to have 3 rotating tackles, and I like Collins and I like West, and they need one more guy. Now, there's a couple guys in this draft that are really, really good. One that I really like. I mean, this kid from the middies from Navy, Landon Robinson. I mean, he's 6 feet. He's 290. But his get off and he plays the game on his feet, and he's a 1-gap penetrator. He looks, and the motor is off the charts. I really like him. And then I watched Penn State quite a bit this year, and this kid Zane Durant is really a special 3 technique. I mean, he's 6'1", about 290, which is a little bit short, but man, the movement skills, he moves like a linebacker, and he's 290 pounds. Peter Woods from Clemson, also a pretty good player, but Durant and Robinson from Navy are 2 guys that I just think they're short, they're compact, they may not look the part, but man, if you could play them in a rotation and send them at the quarterback, I think those are the kinds of movement, 3 techniques that I'd be looking to add.
Yeah, I think if the plan is to pivot from Jordan Elliott and Kalia Davis, you can get a guy in free agency who, like Sheldon Rankins, for example, who's going to be that veteran, that like pass rush, and then you can come back, like you mentioned, and get one of those high active athletes like a Penn State pass rusher. And then now you're looking pretty, right? Now your D-line is what you envisioned it was to start this season, because you have that pass rushing, you have a pair of pass rushing DTs, a pair of run stuffing DTs, and you have those edge groups. So, I mean, it doesn't seem like the 49ers are that far off from kind of going back to the early 2000s defenses that we saw that were just so dominant, so good, essentially at every level. It's just about identifying talent, obviously staying healthy, but they're really not that far off.
No. What about edge? I mean, they're going to have to find another edge. I love Huff, and I think Huff, if you have Bosa, I think Huff is really a nice player. But they could use another edge, and there's a lot of good ones. And we know that they don't really go for the guys that are 230, 240. They're looking for somebody who's more of an edge setter on first and second down, 270. But now that they've got Mikel, who can kind of play outside on first and second down, he can play inside as a rusher on third down. I think they could really use another edge rusher. Reuben Bain is just spectacular, but he's going in the top 5. Yeah. Is there a guy that you like? I mean, Cassius Howell had a great year for the Aggies. Danny Dennis Sutton was really good for Penn State. This kid Yakis for Illinois is really intriguing. Derek Moore from Michigan. Zion Young from Missouri. I kind of like Mikhail Kamara, who's only 6 feet tall, but he's about 6 feet 270 for the Hoosiers. Do you have a favorite edge rusher in the class?
I mean, I imagine John Lynch, being a Stanford grad, wasn't too happy to see David Bailey transfer to Texas Tech and light it up this year. Yeah, it's tough to get away from him. Every time you watch them, it seems like he's making a play, or it seems like he's just doing something productive, something positive. So if they were to walk away with a guy, obviously he's going to go early, but if they were to walk away from this draft with an edge rusher in the first round, you would kind of shrug your shoulders and be like, yeah, I get that. I understand that, because exactly what you said, like Huff is more of a part-time player. He's not a guy that you're going to want to play against the run. He's a guy that's going to be effective as a pass rusher. And on the other hand, Mykel Williams was more than likely a run defender, a run-first defender, didn't have much pass rush production that was going to come on the interior. So is that where, again, you're doubling down in free agency and the draft? So could you go out and get a guy like, I'm trying to think off the top of my head, like who they could get? Everybody's going to say Trey Hendrickson and Max Crosby, but that doesn't feel realistic. So why not, if you're going to go the veteran route, a guy who had a very good season, went to Cal, Cam Jordan, like he's going to be a veteran. He's available. Like that can be a guy who I think will be very productive. A lot of people wanted him during the trade deadline. So Jalen Phillips, maybe that's too risky coming, because I mean, he just stayed healthy for arguably the first time. But again, like that's the guy who was very freaking good this past year for the Eagles, and he won a lot. So I think there are options out there in the draft and free agency for the 49ers. It's just a matter of like, how much do they want to open that checkbook?
Couple last ones for you before we let you go. We really appreciate your time. We're talking to Kyle Posey from Niners Nation, who's with us on the UMA guest line on Here We Are on Niners Nightly. There's only 2 head coaching jobs left, the Raiders and the Cardinals. There's a lot of talk the Raiders either are going to hire Davis Webb, the former Cal quarterback, which would be a very interesting hire. A lot of people are saying that they're waiting for Clint Kubiak, to finish up the Super Bowl, but Arizona may be waiting for Clint Kubiak. You're out there in the desert. What's your vibe on Arizona? Is there a certain coach that's in the crosshairs for Monty Ossenfort?
I don't think anybody wants that job. Think about what you're going up against. So you just watched the NFC Championship. Guess what division both of those teams play in? The week prior, guess what team that divisional round team played in? And then we have data going back, like the 49ers being in the Super Bowl multiple times. Same with the Rams. So you're going up against the literal best head coaches in the NFL with best offense, best defense. Good luck competing with that and trying to retool and rebuild. It seems like nobody wants the job, and that's been kind of the vibe. So, I mean, maybe they're going to get a retread. Maybe they're going to get a young coordinator. I don't know why a guy like Kubiak, who seems very bright, would take this job. Why not just go back and come back when there's a better gig available? But it does not seem like the Cardinals gig is a dream job. That's for sure.
No. Where do you think Mac Jones is going to go? Would you rather keep Mac Jones for one more year? Because man, he's like playoff insurance, and Purdy's had injuries, and Mac obviously fits in well on and off the field. Or is he too valuable a chip, and would you rather move him on? You might get a second-round pick. You might get a second-round pick and a player. I think the price tag for him might be much higher than people think.
I don't think – first of all, I agree. I don't think there's any question about that. That third feels like the floor, honestly.
Yeah.
So we're talking about a starter who's making pennies on the dollar for a starting quarterback. Like, he's going to fetch a second-round pick in my mind. Also, when will his value ever be higher? So you have to cash in, understanding the market, understanding that, hey, there's going to be a bunch of QB-needy teams. They just saw what he did, who's very good, by the way, had a bunch of games with multiple touchdown passes, over 300 yards. You cannot fake what he did, and in my mind, that's going to give them a second-round pick. And we're just talking about the ways that the 49ers can upgrade. That second-round pick is a starter. So if we're having questions about, hey, like, you can't make this trade because what if Brock Purdy gets hurt? I mean, there's probably a bigger conversation to be had if that's where the conversation centers around. So in my mind, you do cash in, and maybe that's the Vikings, who easy fit. You could argue if he's on the Vikings this year, they're in the playoffs. So there are a couple of teams that do make sense, whether it's the Dolphins or the Vikings, but I would probably go Vikings.
Niners a lot of people feel like the Niners need to invest in the offensive line. And yet the Niners have mentioned, hey, look, a lot of teams invest in offensive linemen early in the draft or picking up at the top of the draft the next year because offensive linemen take time to develop. The 3 guys I love, I mean, this Jennings Dunker from Iowa with the red mullet, the bushy mullet. I mean, watching him today in some of those practices, getting ready for the All-Star game, he just looks like a plug-and-play right tackle to me who could probably play guard at the beginning. But I love Keelan Rutledge from Georgia Tech at guard. I love the Duke right tackle, Brian Parker, as a future center. I'd be very happy if they came away with Dunker, Rutledge, and Parker. Do you have an offensive lineman? I mean, the Maui Goa is supposed to be special. The Penn State guard is just absolutely a mauler. Do you have an offensive lineman that you really like or think would be a good fit for the 49ers? They don't typically go for what everybody else goes for. They're looking for speed and guys who can really run off the ball.
So I'm going to do one better. I think he announced for the draft. I'm not sure if he did. I'm pretty sure he's in there, but I spent a lot of my adult life in Iowa City. So I know exactly who you're talking about here in Dunker. I'm going to go to the other side of the ball and tell you Bo Stevens is where they really need to be at. So he was a left guard. He is a guy who just does not mess up. He plays that kind of grimy, I'm going to push you over, I'm going to get in your face, but he's also very athletic too. To me, he's a starter. He's an upgrade, and you don't have to pay a premium for him. You're probably going to be able to get him in the 4th, 5th, like that range. So knowing and understanding that, hey, if I evaluate and I do my scouting right, I can maybe get away with a starter late in the round. I'm not sure how it's going to play out, but to me, the answer at left guard is Bo Stevens from Iowa. Having watched so many Hawkeye games, he was awesome this year. He was about as good as you can expect. And maybe his frame doesn't check out, so maybe that's why he falls. But from a football standpoint, and I mean, Connor Colby, so you can't tell me they didn't watch Iowa football. From a football standpoint, though, this is like that's a kind of player who could really upgrade the 49ers offensive line and just be like a rock-solid force for the next 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, I like that name as well. He's a kid from Missouri who has a wrestling background. To me, the wrestling background is always something I love for offensive linemen. It shows that you can play with leverage. It shows that you can play with a bended knee. It shows that you'll grapple with guys and are tough. So to me, I love the wrestling background guys, and he's definitely one of them. I'll tell you the guy that you got to watch if you haven't seen him yet. Go check out the kid from McClymonds High School here in Oakland who plays for Illinois, J.C. Davis. He almost came out last year. But I really like J.C. Davis. I think he's probably going to be a mid-round pick. Kyle, awesome stuff, man. Thanks for jumping on KBR. Niners Nightly always appreciates anybody from Niners Nation, and you guys do a great job over there, man. Keep it up, and thanks for coming on KBR.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me. Take care.
Kyle Posey, we got more straight ahead. It's Niners Nightly on the Sports Leader.